Welcome to the Home Team, the show where no matter who you root for, here you are a part of the Home Team. I'm your host, Wyatt Bagnall, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. I'm going to be previewing the Thanksgiving games in this episode. Before I do, jump in, hit like, hit subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Without any further ado, let's break these down. So, I'm going to give them each their own individual video, just because I would like to. And I think that's a good way to do it. Give them each their own time. And we'll start with the teams that play this morning, which is the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. Obviously, this is a game that is pretty stakes intensive, I would say. At this point in the year, you're starting to talk a lot about playoff clinching, seeding, stuff like that for all these teams. And in terms of the Bears and the Lions, that's no different. For Detroit, the stakes are obviously they want to stay at one win for as long as humanly possible and clinch the one seed in the NFC as fast as possible. Well, you can make an argument you don't want to clinch it too fast, because then you start making these calculated decisions about like, oh, how long do we play, guys? Should we rest everybody? Stuff like that. But that starts to become real for Detroit here in the coming weeks. Not to mention, a game like this gets them another game up in the NFC North, another NFC North win. There's a lot to be won and gained here by the Lions. For Chicago, they would be able to theoretically stay alive should they win this game. And I'm not sure how much truly matters, but I think that there's a lot to be said for just draft positioning also. And for some Bears fans, I'm aware that they would sort of like to lose out in a way. Maybe not lose out, but come up generally on the worst end of things so that they could get Matt Eberflus out of that building. And I understand that sentiment. I definitely think that's the best thing for the Bears. But these coming weeks will determine it if they haven't already internally made the decision. So, let's jump in. Quarterback, which team has the advantage? That would be the Detroit Lions. I think Caleb Williams is not playing poorly necessarily. Like, he hasn't done anything to where you'd say, well, the guy's a bust. He just doesn't have it. I think that he came into the worst coaching situation in many ways of these rookies, although I would argue that Drake Mays is maybe worse. But the situation around him, talent-wise, is good. He's got Keenan Allen. He's got DJ Moore. He's got Rome Odunze. He's got Cole Kmet. He's got DeAndre Swift. I mean, there's a lot in terms of weapons. That offensive line is not awesome, but we'll get to that in a second. But Caleb has showed signs of life. It's been more of a roller coaster of a year than maybe you would like as a Bears fan, but that's all right. As for the Lions, it hasn't been so much a roller coaster with Jared Goff outside of one particular game in Houston where he threw 5 interceptions and they still won. Jared Goff is firmly in the MVP race. He's playing great ball. The Lions are out here beating up everybody. I wouldn't mind seeing the Lions play a few closer games, because it seems like when I think of every single year, the team that dominates through the regular season, like they don't play a ton of close games. I think of last year, the Niners. We won a lot of games by blowout, and then we really struggled in single possession games. The year before, the Eagles, they dominated everybody. They played a lot of games. Very few of them were close. And they got to the Super Bowl and they got to the playoffs against these teams that you're not really going to be able to blow out. And a lot of times a team that has been battle-tested the whole year is not worried in those situations. It's the only thing that concerns me about Kansas City. It's just that in a playoff-type scenario where it's a close single-score game, they aren't going to be, worried about it. So while Detroit and Jared Goff have played great, I wouldn't mind a closer one to really see this team have to show some heart. I don't doubt the heart of the Detroit Lions, by the way. To come from where they came from to get to this point, and it's a lot of the guys on this team that did that like were a part of the rebuild. I don't necessarily doubt that they have heart, but I would love to see them be in a little bit of a closer game, especially on Thanksgiving. Why not? Let's have a good game today. Running backs. This is the Lions as well in terms of who's better. So the Lions got the point of quarterback and running back. DeAndre Swift is not a bad running back for the Bears. He's actually pretty good. They don't necessarily use him great. And when behind an offensive line that's not functioning at a super high level, it's tough to get the best of DeAndre Swift. However, the Lions don't have these issues. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are both elite backs as just thunder and lightning backs. David Montgomery is a power back. Not necessarily going to run away from everybody, though he does break off a couple good runs. Whereas Jahmyr Gibbs isn't going to break every tackle that comes his way unless he just makes them miss. But he's likely for a home run every game or so. Like he makes at least one or two big plays most of the time that they take the field. They're a perfect complement to one another. David Montgomery is a back that gets even better as the game goes on because they get tired. It's less fun to try to tackle a big bruising back like that. And overall, I feel like the Lions just don't have a weakness at running back, to be frank. Wide receiver. This is one where, I struggle with this one because I genuinely feel that, the Lions have a more effective receiving core. I also believe that it's not a weakness for the Bears, so I'm going to give them both a point for wide receiver. I think that it's pretty, I suppose you could say it's pretty close between who the number one is on each team. Actually, no, the number one actually is not that close. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the best receiver on the field. But I'll give the Bears the edge for the depth guys. Even though I think Jamison Williams is a fine enough receiver in terms of being dangerous, he doesn't seem to be number one, and he's got to keep himself out of trouble. But when he plays, he's been dangerous. He's caught a couple huge passes this year. And I think that there's no weakness in the Lions receiving core. And as for the Bears, I don't know exactly who you'd call your number one. I would consider it to be DJ Moore for the Bears. And then you go, if I was the Bears, I would try to be going Keenan Allen, then Rome Odunze. The health of Keenan Allen's been a little up and down this year. But, not much to be done for that at this time. I think that Rome Odunze has the potential to be really good. He hasn't necessarily had the type of year that you would hope, given what Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison have done. Marvin Harrison's really quietly had a good year, but Malik Neighbors has been a little more flashy. I think that the Bears have a good receiving core. I don't think they've necessarily been deployed properly. I don't think that they're necessarily getting the most out of them, but I'm not concerned about the Bears receivers outside of maybe their attitude. I feel like receivers are one of the first positions to get disengaged when the offense isn't quite working and stuff like that. They don't want to block so much. They're getting frustrated. They're not getting the ball. So if these guys just remain professionals, I'm not concerned about the Bears receiving core. But it's something to monitor. Tight end, Cole Kmet and Sam Laporta are both good tight ends. I think Sam Laporta is the better one, but I'm not going to give the Bears a disadvantage for Cole Kmet, while I do believe Sam Laporta is better. So I'm going to give them both a point there. Not to mention, it's a holiday. We're going to be a little bit generous. Usually if I think somebody's pretty definitively better, I'll give it to them, but I like Cole Kmet. Even though the Bears use him in a weird way, which is part of the reason why Shane Waldron got fired. They have all these weapons, and my God, they just don't utilize them in a proper way. It's like they have weird spacing on their routes. They don't run very many things. They didn't even used to script the plays on the offense. Like usually teams script the first 15 to 20 or something like that. They have about that many. And the Bears just weren't doing that. They're just going out there running plays. It's like the whole point of these game plans is to be able to know what we want to run. And, man, the Bears just fell short. But Cole Kmet's a good tight end. Isn't necessarily going to have like a Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber year. But he's a solid player. Whereas Sam Laporta, I think you're looking at one of the better tight ends going into the future. I wouldn't say he's the top tight end going into the future. I think that George Kittle still has a couple good years in him left being like the top one. And then after that, I would take Brock Bowers. I think Travis Kelce, while being a good player, is no longer in the prime of his career. And we're going to see sort of the next generation of tight ends coming up. And I would say that the next generation of tight ends is Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta. And I would say for the next couple of years, we're looking at George Kittle. But those two in particular are the young tight ends where it's like, okay, there's something there with those guys. Offensive line, just the Lions. Sorry. The Bears' offensive line has been really not good. Abysmal in pass protection. However, I will say this. Caleb Williams, he did this in college, and he's done it in the NFL. He holds the ball too long. In college, I think he was the only high-ranked prospect whose average time to throw is over 6 seconds. That is not nearly high enough. In the NFL, that ball has to be out in under 4 seconds. On average, it has to be out in under 4 seconds. If you're lingering above 4 seconds, which he is, you are giving the pass rush too much time to get to you. A lot of teams want it out even faster than that. So I don't know if he hasn't grasped the offense well enough to make quick decisions. I don't know if he's got bad habits of he wants to see something open and not anticipate it open and throw it open. But whatever it is, he holds the ball too long. And when your offensive line already isn't playing well, and then you decide to go ahead and not help the situation by not getting the ball out, it's a recipe for disaster for the Chicago Bears. And that disaster has manifested. The Bears' offensive line it's something that I know that every once in a while they have individual players. Tevin Jenkins plays well at guard sometimes, but then his health is usually an issue. It's just a recipe for disaster with an O-line that, let's be generous and say, is in the works. They are working to improve it, let's say that. And then a quarterback whose strength is clearly not processing speed and quick decisions at this point in his career. For whatever reason it is, those two things mixed together are a pretty deadly combination. And it makes the use of those weapons that we all like, that everybody got really excited about, it makes that an impossible thing to use. So I'm going Lions O-line because I think they're the best in the league. They pass block great. They run block great. Penei Sewell, in my opinion, is the best tackle in the league into the future. And the Lions just don't have a weakness along that group. Defensive line. You could convince me that there's an argument to be made for giving the Bears some semblance of a point here, given Montez Sweat. But I'm going with the Lions, even without Aiden Hutchinson. I would say that Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, they brought in Zadarius Smith. He'll be making his debut soon. They're really strong along the defensive line. Defensive tackle is really strong. And then the edge at this point, they have a rotation of guys. And if Aiden Hutchinson is able to return late in the season, which the Lions very much have a possibility to be alive for, this is a really dangerous unit. And it's been a good group all year. And frankly, I got a lot of respect for the Lions' defensive line. And I'll give them the point pretty definitively here. As for linebacker, okay, I'm trying to think. This could be the one where I would be really, really able to give potentially the Bears just the point. And it's not because I don't think that guys like Anzalone and Campbell are good players. I think Anzalone actually took a little bit of an injury last week. It was either last week or the week before. I think Anzalone got a little banged up. But TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds for the Chicago Bears are good players. They've had a tougher year this year because the Bears on the whole have not been as dominant defensively this year. I would say that the Lions linebackers may look more effective out there because the circumstances allow them to, and so much about linebacker play, especially against the run, is based on the defensive line, where a huge part of what their goal is as a defensive line, it's not just about holding a gap and shooting a gap. For defensive linemen, it's also a lot about occupy the blocks and don't let the linebackers get blocked. So, like, don't let these offensive linemen be able to get off you and go to the linebackers. Like, you see it once or twice a year, although it happens more than that, but it's just rare where you see defensive holding on a run play against a defensive lineman. It's because they will legitimately try to like hold these offensive linemen to not get by them to get to the linebackers. And I think that happens much better for the Lions than it does the Bears. So you'll see TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds have to try to fight off more. And sometimes they won't be able to make the splash plays, especially like at or behind the line of scrimmage, because this defensive line for the Bears just doesn't block them up and doesn't hold their block for like until the proper moment, or they get moved out of their gap by the Detroit offensive line in this game. Like, I think that I would rather have the Chicago linebackers, but I don't know that if in this game and in this season they're going to look as effective. But once again, it's a holiday. I'm going to give them the full point here over the Lions, even though I like Anzalone and Jack Campbell. But Lions fans, I think we can be giving today and let the Bears fans have one full one. Defensive backs, Jalen Johnson's a good cornerback. Jaquan Brisker's a pretty good safety, but the Lions are better. Brian Branch, I think, is the future of the safety position in the NFL. Him and Kyle Hamilton, they both are playing really, really unique ball. But this year, Brian Branch has been the best safety in football. Kirby Joseph, the other safety, is also playing elite ball. Cornerback, Lions are a little bit weaker, but not necessarily horribly. Terrion Arnold, their rookie corner, he's had his moments where he plays well, but he's on the whole been a real roller coaster. Early in the year, he was struggling more, but he hasn't been the worst in the league. And then you got came over from Tampa Bay. God damn it. How can I be blanking on his name? He's a really good player, or he was in Tampa Bay. He was a really good player. But Carlton Davis, that's the one. Yes, Carlton Davis is the other one. And then it looks like he might be dealing with a bit of an injury situation. And if that's the case, Amik Robertson oftentimes comes in. So the Lions corners without Carlton Joseph are graded a bit lower, no doubt about it. But Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph are both graded in the top 3 for safeties. It doesn't get much more productive than that from the safety position. And as for the Bears, outside of Johnson, Kevin Byard's a good safety. Brisker is in and out sometimes, but when he plays, he's good. They have Jonathan Owens, I believe is his name. The internet would better know him as the boyfriend of Simone Biles. But on the whole here, while the Bears have some decent players, Kevin Byard's a good player, and Jalen Johnson's a good player, they're just not quite stacking up against what the Lions are offering. And I think for that, we're going to have to give the Detroit Lions the point. And then head coach. Listen, I think everybody knows how this is going to go. Dan Campbell is the better coach. There's a reason he's not on the hot seat. There's a reason that Eberflus is on the hot seat. And it's that he hasn't done a great job with the Bears. And with a roster that I think is talented, I think this team does not have an identity. And I think that's the biggest thing about it. They don't know what type of team they want to be. And I think that if you're a team that plays outdoors in the North, you need to have a certain type of identity that you can pivot to, which means it always has to be there, which is toughness. And I don't think the Chicago Bears are particularly tough. I think that they need to be more focused on the trenches. I think that they need to be more focused on the run game and then play action passes and things like that. Because especially given the time of year we're getting into, you got to be able to play tough ball, and you're the Chicago Bears. defense and run the ball, it's great. But in the modern NFL, you also do need to be able to layer it in. But good for them. If you can run the ball, play action passing is the way of the NFL right now. And I think that that's what the Bears need to lean into. When we get to the offseason, we'll break down all these teams and how to quote unquote fix them, or what's next, or how do we get them to the next step, or is it a situation where it's like, okay, we've got to tear it down. But as for the Bears, I think they're on the right track. I think it's a year away, and I think that this is probably a tough game for them in prime time. So the final scores in terms of the rosters are 3-9. Advantage Chicago with the extra home team advantage because they are at home for this game. And I think that in terms of who I hope will win, I want the Lions to be the top seed in the NFC. And I've sort of accepted where my Niners are going to be this year. We just can't stay healthy and we can't get momentum, and it's just not our year. And with that being said, I hope the Lions win the whole damn conference. So I hope they win, and I think they will. I hope it's a good game. I don't know if Chicago has the capacity to do that for the Lions, but we'll see. I think this is going to be a game that maybe, given that it's a division game, it could be close. And early on in the game, we might be able to be like, okay, hey, we got a shot here. This looks good. I just don't really think it's going to be. I think that Detroit, through the course of the game, is going to pull away unless they make a lot of mistakes like they did in the Houston game, which is possible. So with that being said, Lions fans, Bears fans, I hope that it's a great game for you. Happy Thanksgiving. And I'll have the other game breakdowns coming out throughout the day. And, thanks so much for tuning in. Hit like, hit subscribe. Peace.